the minutes from last month, and we had a whole lot in the minutes from last month. I hope everybody had a chance to read them. Can I get a motion to approve, or did anybody notice anything that needs to be fixed?
Hey, Kathleen is here. The minutes looked good. I will motion to approve.
So can I get a second? Okay. Tie between Brad and Sarah for the second. So
yeah, it's Sarah, that's fine.
Whoever you want, Kristin. And we have nobody here for a public forum, and as far as I know, Glenn, you have not heard from anybody this month who asked to speak.
No, not this month, John.
Okay, because we had the candidate last month who expressed interest and then did not show up. So we'll move on to the city council report. And I think we're all eager to find out what the city plans to do with all the money we're getting from the federal government, Mark.
Well, we don't really know the answer to that question yet, but that sort of suggests what I wanted to mention is that we are entering the period of the year that most of us on the council look forward to with great anticipation, which is review of the budget. And in fact, we just got the budget yesterday. I am this year for the first time, I'm just doing it electronically. I didn't ask for a paper copy. It's a stack of books about that thick if you get the paper copy. 1,600 pages in the PDF file. There's a lot of useful information in there, not 1,600 pages worth, but about 400 pages are really useful. And sometime between now and next Thursday evening, when we have our first budget committee meeting, I will have to read about a third of that book in order to get ready for the first round of discussions. We'll have 3 meetings, next Thursday, the following Monday, and then 2 weeks from Thursday is our final meeting. During the first 2 meetings, we get updates from the various departments, including Glenn talking to us about the library on next Monday the 24th. And we usually have some discussion between the members of the budget committee and the departments doing the presentations. Then on the last evening, there will be 1 department presentation, which is our community development department. And then we go into discussions about potential amendments to the budget that are recommended either by staff or by members of the budget committee, which includes the city council, of course. And then we vote on what to forward to the city council for consideration and adoption in June. And I think that meeting has been scheduled for the 2nd or 3rd Tuesday in June. This is a big time for us. It's been an interesting year, obviously, with the pandemic. There have been some impacts to revenues of the city. For instance, we took a big hit in the transient lodging tax revenue, which is hotel taxes, because people weren't traveling and they weren't staying in hotels in Beaverton at the rate that they typically do. Since we've pledged those funds to support the Patricia Research Center for the Arts, both construction and ongoing operation, it caused a little bit of nervousness, but we had built up enough of a reserve in the fund that we set up there that the first year of operations would not be affected. And it looks like hotel stays are recovering fast enough to cover the projections for the second year of operations of the PRCA, which is great. Our goal is that we can start to build up a substantial reserve for the Center for the Arts out of that lodging tax fund. And over time, as the center generates more of its own revenue and as there are additional private donations to build up a trust fund for the Center for the Arts, the city may be able to start to use some of the lodging tax funds for general fund purposes again, such as supporting affordable housing programs, such as expanding services at the library, or other new things that get invented by the council along the way. So budget is the big deal this year. Shortages of revenues are potentially going to be offset to some degree by the influx of the federal funds. We are receiving somewhere around $8.5 million sometime this month. A certain amount of that has already been slated to be plugged into the budget to fill some of those gaps. One of those, besides the Center for the Arts, another one is the building fund, which is the fund that generates permits for construction activity, residential and commercial construction activity around the city. And that has obviously slacked off a bit during the pandemic. Fewer new applications for permits. And rather than lay off employees in response to a reduction in activity, we like to do different things. So some of those employees have actually been assigned to other tasks in the meantime. And we are backfilling the revenue that normally would be coming in with some of the federal money that's coming in as well. But there are still, I think, somewhere around $5 million of the federal money for this fiscal year that has not been designated for any specific purpose yet. And we have not yet started the process of deciding what to spend that on, because we're not the only ones receiving money. The county receives money, the state receives money, and the state monies have been partially allocated to state legislators, representatives and senators to distribute to projects in their districts. And so there has been a very substantial lobbying effort to try to encourage the portion of the Washington County legislative delegation, which represents Beaverton, to put some of their monies into Beaverton area projects that we have nominated. They're mostly social good projects. They're, we're not spending this on sort of lighter weight things. We're putting it on things that address problems that have arisen through COVID, problems that we've been trying to solve for a long time, like building up our capacity for shelter for homeless people. As everybody knows, we've got this project going on to replace the community center with a senior residence that will include affordable housing. That will then kick the severe weather shelter out of that building into a different location. And so our ask of state legislators, of the federal government, and of potentially the county is to find funds to acquire some land or on land that we already own to be able to construct a building that can be used for a larger shelter facility than we currently have. So our goal is to up-level the facility and the service that we're able to provide while we're taking down the community center sometime in the next few years. So those kinds of decisions are all ahead of us. But even before that, Friday, we, the council, are interviewing the 2 finalist candidates for our city manager position. It's a big deal for us. This is the first full-time, hopefully long-term, hopefully more than 2 years, city manager that we will be bringing in to manage Glenn and keep him in line, because he's just totally out of control all the time. The candidates, the 2 finalists, are in Beaverton right now. One is actually an Oregon-based, lives in the Portland metro area. The other is from California. They're here now, getting tours, meeting some people, and you have an opportunity to meet them through the public forum that's taking place tomorrow evening. And hopefully you've seen some social media or received some email about that. If not, go to the city website. There's some links on the homepage about how to get access to this. But this is a really important position. Beaverton hasn't had a city manager for over 40 years. And we've been working with an interim, but the interim relationship is very different than the long-term relationship. The long-term relationship is substantive, and the department heads will be spending a lot of time with this person. The council will be spending a lot of time with this person, and the best candidate is the one who's going to do the best job of managing those relationships so that the desires and wishes of the council and the desires, wishes, and needs of the staff to do the work can reach a happy harmony in the middle someplace. It's an interesting position. I'm not sure I would ever apply for one of those jobs. But we love it when there are good people who do, and I think we have 2 really strong candidates for the position. So with that, I'll stop talking and answer any questions anybody has about our business.
Before you ask Mark any questions, if you have any questions about the 5th Street projects, I'd like to save them until after Kathleen tells us about what's going on with the Friends of the Library. But questions on any other topics for right now, let's take them. No questions?
Tune in tomorrow night. Watch those city manager candidates.
And I know we all got a lot of emails about it. If nothing else, I'm pretty sure it's in the links Kristin sent with the city news. So you definitely have that information. Glenn, we'll move on to the foundation report.
Sure, thank you, John. The foundation right now is looking to sort of reset their sights on some new projects on which to focus their attention. Since the main project that they had been working towards and committed to funding, which is the addition of the Library on Wheels van to our fleet to add additional capacity, outreach capacity for our much in demand outreach services, was put on hold since the request for the additional half-time FTE outreach specialist who would help literally drive the van as well as provide related services. That request was denied as part of the internal budget process. So we're in the process of putting together a list of other possible projects for funding by the foundation. So that's really the focus of that group at the moment.
Okay, and we have Arvin with us tonight. Arvin, are you prepared to give us a teen council report?
Yes. So for the TLC, they ended the year, and the reapplications will go out in July. The reapplications are already out, but the new applications will be done by July. As for events, we have like a limerick contest that's been ended last month, and the TLC judged the winners. We have summer reading contest that's in June 1st. We are doing like in-person programs this summer, and then we also have the Ian basically named like the front lawn. We'll have like tie-dye, I think like succulent plant like decorations for little children, and then we'll have like concrete leaves and a bunch of other monthly contests that we used to do. Like, and I think those were, some of them were like water themed and photo food contest. And then for podcasting, we'll be extending that through the summer. I think we'll do once a month, so 3 during the summer, and then kind of bring that back up again in September. That's about it.
Did you get a lot of funny limericks?
Yeah, there are some really good ones.
Plain?
Oh yeah.
Do you
Very
have any
good.
with you tonight?
I don't.
I heard you got a pretty decent turnout though, Arvin, despite the fact that it was all virtual this year.
Yeah, it was pretty good. A
Yeah,
little less
more than
obviously.
100?
I don't know the exact number, but yeah.
Yeah.
But it was definitely more than what we would expect from online, but less than last year, obviously.
Yeah.
Very good. Does anybody have any questions for Arvin tonight?
It was 113 limericks,
Wow.
Wow.
which is amazing that is fewer than usual. That's a lot of limericks.
Something ought to rhyme with that. Okay. Thanks, Arvin. Very good. Kathleen, we'll move on to the Friends report. But your baby is growing so fast.
I know. Well, you guys didn't see her last month. All right. Here. And off she goes. Alrighty. So the Friends are very busy right now. They're really busy trying to redefine themselves. They are going after grants. They're trying to, they came up with a mission statement. They are breaking up into subgroups to search for fundraising opportunities. And they are just really, really taking this opportunity to branch off in a lot of very new directions for them to try to do outreach and try to spread the word and try to take advantage of some momentum that they have. They just appeared in a magazine, the Life and Culture section of the Oregonian. And so they're even sent an email out a couple of days ago, like, how do we take advantage of this? How do we move forward with this? So they are really taking every opportunity that they can to try to figure out how they're going to use the opportunity of this potential movement in order to do some really new things that they haven't done before. So they did a really cool pitch where they made this slideshow presentation with who they are and what they do and what their mission is and their impact on the library. And so they are really having it all looks fantastic. Everything that they're doing is really, really positive. Some really specific things that I can tell you is that something that they're doing is ending a relationship with US Bank. They're trying to get a local credit union instead of a bank. They're having some issues with US Bank. They're also looking for new members. One of their funding sources with the selling the books, thrift books, they're closing their Portland warehouse in June. And so they are trying to seek other opportunities. They're going to be working with them through June and then looking elsewhere. But thrift books has been a major contributor of some of this more online income over the past year. So they're looking for other partners in order to sell some of these used books. And the other note I have is exploring lots of grant and marketing options. They are hitting the pavement looking for these. They're talking to Walmart. They're talking to, I mean, just everybody that you can think of that has some extra money. The Book Corner is seeking them out and saying, what do we need to do to apply for this? So they are having a really wonderful outreach right now.
So it sounds like they're turning into more of a typical Friends of the Library group than a bookstore management operation, I guess, which is
yes, they're trying to figure out some potentially or possible long overdue changes, especially with outreach and momentum and word of mouth, and they are really hidden, and they still hear people all the time that I didn't know that there was a bookstore here. And so this is a lot of things that they could have been doing the whole time, but didn't really have any impetus to do so. So I think they're really taking this opportunity and doing some really wonderful things.
I think that's very good. What is the board's feeling about the displacement at this point?
There was some negativity at first. It's a big change. They didn't know what they were going to do with all the supply. They didn't think there was enough room at the library to house enough of their retail operations. And now it really sounds like there's a lot of optimism. They have all these new things going for them. They have some new board members that are cultivating relationships. It's a better feeling than it was a couple of months ago.
Good. I think for us, the Friends do so much to support the library. So much that taxpayer dollars would be used for otherwise, especially I think for the summer reading program where they've been tremendously supportive. And I think it's incumbent on us as a board to do everything we can to support the Friends. I'm going to say right now in what may be a time of transition. And it sounds like they're doing really well with it anyway. But if you would like, perhaps we should invite the Friends board to join us at our meeting next month, if they would like to do that. If they're looking for any support, if they would like us to take a position on the loss of their building. I think either way, if they're adjusted to that, that's fine. If they would like us to oppose it, I think that's fine. I think it would be something that we should do to help them for all that they do for the library. And we may also want to take a position on the destruction of the community center and the construction of a new building on that site and what that will mean to the library. Any thoughts on that? And any questions for Marc about that as well. Brad, you look ponderous. Are you thinking about something?
Yeah, everything's kind of tentative right now with that site, isn't it?
You're asking
I was
Marc?
trying to remember our discussion last time. I remember discussing it. It seemed like it wasn't final what was going to be done.
It's not final. The town hall was meant to get some thoughts and perspectives from various people out in the public. There have been continuing discussions with various groups and interested parties. We've made a commitment at the council that the facilities, the services that are currently located at those places will be somewhere else nearby. So community garden, homeless shelter / severe weather shelter, another place for the Friends of the Library operation. All those things have to be satisfied before we move forward with any changes to the actual buildings that are there now. But there's a pretty strong lean in the direction of doing the new things. So at this point, the lean is there, the decision is not.
So even if
I have a
not,
question related to the senior housing element, low-income senior housing element of that. First, I have two questions. One, I'm interested in some of the data supporting the need. I mean, I think all of us see there's an obvious need for no-income housing, but I haven't seen data on low-income housing. So I'd be interested in anything you could share on those lines. And the other thing is, assuming that need exists, and I trust it does, why didn't we ask the developer of those Kmartments to put in some low-income senior housing there, especially given that the property is, I believe, still owned by the Sisters of St. Mary, who are an organization that I would expect to be pretty receptive to a request of that nature.
You mean the corner of Murray and Farmington?
Right.
Well,
I'm calling them Kmartments. I'm sure that's not the official name.
Yeah. It's helpful to remember that the only way that we get regulated affordable housing, meaning housing that is at below market rents and stays at below market rents for long periods of time, and by long periods we mean decades, not just for 3 years. The only way we get that is by the city, the county, the state, or the federal government injecting money into the project. Private developers generally, with very few exceptions, do not build below market rate housing. They can't make a profit doing that. And they are for-profit businesses. Some want more profit than others. So we like to work with the ones that are willing to, shave a little off the margin in order to keep their rental rates or their housing prices at a less expensive level, I'll say, not to confuse the word affordable. But for regulated affordable housing that is below market pricing, we have to put money into it. So with a private development, we have to do some work to convince the parties involved to take our money and apply it to a number of their units to keep those at a lower rate. They generally don't make as much money on that arrangement as they would if they were to simply rent out or sell at market rates. And so some developers are willing to do that and some are not. Since it's private property, it's their choice. We don't get to force that on people. So where we do get to control the story is when we own the property and we get to set the rules for how the property is used by whoever we're selling it to. So that's one of the reasons that the city and the Urban Redevelopment Agency, which is a wing of the city, have been so aggressive about buying land all over the downtown area and other parts of the city. The more land we own and the more land we control, the more opportunity we have to bring in developers who are going to work with us on regulated affordable housing. So that's why the community center site is such an obvious location for senior housing, is we already own the land and we don't have to pay anybody for it. And we can set the rules for what we can do, the solicitation for developers, and we can tell them exactly what we need. And the only people who are going to apply in response to those solicitations are developers who are willing to do things on our terms. The good news is there's plenty of those, as long as there is government money injected into it. And that wouldn't be just city money, that would also be possibly some county money, but definitely some state money. And every now and then some federal money drifts in and we get to apply that as well. So it's a tricky business. And I think if you want the best education I can suggest to you is to take a look at our 5-year housing action plan, which contains a lot of sort of background material in addition to the specifics about what we're trying to accomplish. It kind of has some of the statistics that you're looking for, such as what the need is in various categories. And I don't know to what extent it articulates specifically the need for senior affordable housing, but I can tell you from the conversations we've had with our team, that need is substantial.
And I have a question. So when you convert the community garden, do we have any public votes that whether it can be converted or to keep as a community garden?
Well, we've had some very, very productive discussions with Tualatin Hills Park and Rec District about having them take over responsibility for community gardens in general. It's kind of not one of the major skill sets of the city of Beaverton. We do have landscaping experts, but we don't have community garden managers. But Tualatin Hills Park and Rec District operates in community gardens in other parts of the district. And so there's a very strong possibility that THPRD will end up being the steward of the replacement garden for the facility that's currently behind the community center.
John, I have a comment.
Sure.
Thank you. I want to thank the council for taking the opportunity to respond to the questions. And as the official liaison to this group, to this board from the city, I just want to provide a gentle reminder to this board of the scope of its authority. And that is limited to matters related to the operation of the library. So again, while I appreciate the councilor taking the time to respond to the question, it really lies outside of the scope of the authority of this group. So I just wanted to, again, just a gentle reminder about that. And so we do have a pretty full agenda of library specific related items. So if we could just get back to library business, I think that would be appropriate for the duration of the meeting.
And I agree with Glenn, but I will say that any members of the Library Advisory Board are always welcome to express their opinions directly to the City Council, and feel free to do so.
Okay, any other questions for Mark? Then we'll move on to a fine topic. Glenn, you want to talk about fines?
Yes, thank you, John. I'd like to go ahead and I've got two, I want to say handouts, but attachments, I guess is a more appropriate word under the circumstances. So just bear with me while I find the first of the two. Here we are. Okay, can you all see that? I'm going to try to make it a little bit bigger.
Yeah, no problem.
Yep.
Okay, very good. So this document was prepared by the County Library Cooperative and provides an overview and background about the fine-free initiative, which was implemented thanks to a vote by the county commissioners, Washington County Board of Commissioners, back in, I believe it was December of last year, because the initiative went into effect in January. So now, and this information, as you can see, was provided last month in April, at which time we were approximately about 3 months in to going fine-free as a county cooperative. So, and if I'm not mistaken, I think this information may have been shared in advance, but forgive me, I can't recall. But just briefly to go over this, so as mentioned, we did go fine-free back in January, the end of January. And at that time, close to 10,000 library patrons were able to regain library privileges as a result of going fine-free, because whose privileges had previously been blocked as a result of excessive fines. So 10,000 residents of the county immediately got access once again to all 12 Washington County cooperative member libraries, including municipal libraries, association libraries, and of course the one county library in neighboring West Slope. And so equity was a huge driver of this initiative. As the document points out, that there's a lot of research that supports the fact that fines disproportionately impact low-income members of the community, as well as and specifically communities of color. And then goes on to talk about how the policy was communicated in various languages, and how the initiative began with support, variety of conversations with different constituent groups, beginning in the summer of 2020, and part of a pretty much a nationwide effort at this point, which has been based on the information that I have building over the course of the last 5 to 10 years, and specifically the last several years. And the pandemic really, I think, gave it an added push, because the pandemic too disproportionately impacted communities of color in a negative way. So it really helped to gain much needed traction for this movement. And so consequently, there was overwhelming support, not only by all the member libraries, but also the Cooperative Executive Board, and then ultimately by the board of the County Board of Commissioners, who voted to approve this change. And then some data, because we all love some good data. Since the county libraries went fine-free, the number of overdue items has actually decreased from 14 to 8%, which some might think is counterintuitive, but there you are. And the number of patrons with overdue items has actually dropped from 27 to 17%. Again, you would think that would be counterintuitive, but that data has shown that library users are very responsive to going fine-free, and one might add, express their appreciation by returning their items on time. And so here is that data represented graphically. So you can see the top number, line rather, in orange, patrons with overdue items decreasing from February through April, and then the bottom graph showing similar downward trend for the number of overdue items. So before I share the next attachment, just want to pause to see if there are any questions thus far.
Did you communicate to the 10,000 members that your record is like active now and you can borrow books, or how it was communicated to them that their record is unblocked?
Yeah, so Sarah, that information was communicated via email, social media, websites. I believe it was also went out, the county sent out a countywide mailer, and it was communicated as indicated here in a variety of different languages. And had the libraries been open at the time, we would have been able to post notices at the libraries themselves. Although I think actually we did in the form of posters, because most of us at the time were at least providing a curbside service.
Yeah, I too got that they are saying like fine-free, we are going fine-free from the Washington County or from the library, I don't remember. But because everybody personally, they might not know, or they might not have noticed that their code was like removed. They have the access to the library. So that's what my concern is, like 9,000 people might, maybe 5,000 might know and 4,000 might not know that their code is unblocked or active right now. So is there any other way to communicate to them, or?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting. Now I'm remembering a conversation, I think it was a couple months ago, at the WCCLS, at the County Library Cooperative Policy Group, which is essentially the directors of all the member libraries, where this topic was discussed. And I remember another communication channel or vehicle, if you will, that the county cooperative provided was a postcard that went out in multiple languages to every resident of the county. So it was really saturation coverage delivered to every resident's house throughout the county in multiple languages about the libraries going fine-free. So it was the impression, it was the belief of the manager of the county cooperative at that time that the library cooperative had done everything it had at that point in time to get the information out to residents of the community. That said, individual member libraries, of course, have been and will continue to do their parts, including Beaverton, to get the word out to residents to make sure that as many people as possible know about having gone fine-free. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you.
So Glenn, as a follow-up, how many of those 10,000 people have checked out a book since they've been unblocked?
That was my second question.
Yeah, I stole it from you. Sorry, Sarah.
Yeah, I'm not
No
sure if
mind.
that data is available. It's a great question, but I will ping the county and see if that information is available. And that's just making some notes here. And that may be very well a function of the library automation system that we use, but I'll certainly inquire. Okay, any other questions before we move on to the next attachment?
Yes, I have a question. What percentage, that 10,000, what percentage is that of total library card holders in the county?
Ooh, that's another good question. I will certainly inquire about that. Just making a note here. Okay. Right, any other questions?
I have an anecdote that is related that I just happened to be in the library last week when a distraught woman came in with library books that she'd had since before the library shut down. And she was pleading with the librarian to please not charge her for these books that she had had for almost a year and a half. And she was very, very pleased to find out that there would be no fine. So even with all the outreach, it's people are going to slip through the cracks anyway and not know what's happening there.
Yeah, that's what also add up. See, because people may not know that past due is also being cleared, or moving forward, it is going to be fine free. So if I hold back like $50 I owe to the library, is that being waived off, or is that being cleared, or it is going to be fine free after January? So the people, those who had $50 or even $10 might not know my fee is waived off.
I think the information did communicate pretty well that it was going to be retroactive to anything currently out.
Yeah,
The
and
card I received is like, it said like we are going fine free. It's not mentioned, I think. I don't remember.
I can double check on that, Sarah, and make sure that any information we send out subsequently contains that information.
Yeah, thank you.
I can't control what the, our member library colleagues do, or necessarily what they do at the cooperative level, but to certainly make sure anything we do from that comes out from Beaverton City Library does contain that information.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you guys ready to move on to the next handout? Not hearing any objections, I will proceed to do so. Okay. Okay. All right, this one is a little bit more dense. And this is a spreadsheet broken down by member library within the cooperative. And I've highlighted the 2 Beaverton library locations. So if you look in column B, which is before the fine free went into effect, these were the total amount in fines that were being considered for being waived or potentially collected for that matter. And I don't know if it's a note of distinction or not, but City of Beaverton, the library that is, had the lion's share of overdue fines, and not a total surprise considering the fact that Beaverton and Hillsborough are the top two circulating libraries in the county. But between the two locations, we had about $500,000 in unclaimed fines prior to going fine free. And if you look at column C, the number of fee charges, so fees in addition to fines, so fees would be for replacement of a lost book and things of that nature. That number was close to about $200,000 between the two library locations. And then column D represents the number of patrons having either an overdue, a processing fee, a processing charge, or a collection agency charge, etc. That number was about 31,000. Okay. Column E represents the number of patrons whose accounts had been blocked as a result of overdue fines. That number was approximately 8,000. Okay. So the lion's share of the 22,000 total, about a third of those, more than a third of those were Beaverton patrons, Beaverton registered patrons. And then column F represented after the fine-free policy went into effect, the number of patron accounts that were, after waived patron account, number of patrons blocked. Hold on one second.
Yeah, it's column G is the people that got unblocked.
Correct. So I'm puzzling over the meaning of column F. So apparently there was a waiver of some sort. I'll have to find out specifically what prior to unblocking those patrons. Maybe we waived some, sorry, I do know. It's waived the number of fines, the number of patrons whose fines were waived. So between the two libraries, it represented approximate more than about 4,400. And then finally, column G represents the number of patrons whose cards were unblocked as a result of going fine free. And that number is about 3,500, which represented more than a third of the total in the county as a whole. So I know that's a lot
So
of
the difference
data.
between column F and column G then is people who owe fees and are still blocked for that reason?
No, no one is going to be blocked. I think what it represents is that
that might be they were active, Glenn. Maybe they were active with less fine in them. So
Could they be
that
blocked
might.
for a different reason?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'll have to find out and get back to the board with that information.
Yeah, because it's more than 900 people. It's quite a few.
Also, column B, the title, you misspelled wave.
Typo.
It's a typo, that's all.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that point, Andrew?
At the beginning of column B, at the top, it says before wavy.
Right, okay, thank you. Yeah, this spreadsheet was prepared for us by the county, but that said, duly noted, and we'll mention that, make sure it gets updated. Okay, any other questions or comments? So as you can see, the Going Fine Free has had a significant impact on the ability of folks to once again and restore their library privileges, and continue to keep the board updated with updates to the information and data about the impact that Going Fine Free is having on circulation, and specifically, and to the extent that we can get information about individuals whose accounts were previously blocked, and their utilization and circulation and borrowing of materials. But if data from other library systems across the country is any indicator, we anticipate that, well, we'll see an uptick not only in circulation, but also new card registrations. We're already seeing a decrease in the number of overdue materials, as well as the percentage of patrons with overdue individuals, even in the short period of time between the end of January and April when this data was prepared. So I think it's pretty clear that Going Fine Free has already had a significantly positive impact on the community in a short period of time.
Glenn, is there any information about how long things are overdue and any difference? Like, are people more likely to be 1 day over instead of 3 months over?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, but I'll try and find out to the extent that that information is available.
Sorry, just a note. So the EFG, the reason that F doesn't equal G is because it's E minus F equals G.
Right.
So there are still patrons that are blocked. Sorry, I just figured that out. I thought I'd share.
So E minus F, so it's before the number of patrons who are blocked and after the waiver. Ah, okay. Thank you,
Right, but
Kathleen.
Mhm.
the question we had was why are they blocked?
Yeah.
Why do we have 900 or so?
Yeah, that'd be
people
interesting.
People
Yeah.
being blocked.
Okay, so we still have some additional information to uncover regarding that that data point. So we'll see if we can get that information. Okay, any other comments or questions?
I have one more, Glenn. So before you used to send us the email like your books are due such and such a date, and I think 2 or 3 reminders for the books are being sent. If it is overdue more than 10 or 20 days, do you send the reminder emails again? Or what is the limit for you to send the reminder emails?
So I don't know that we're going to have any changes to that. The county did just recently turn on, or in fact, I think will be as of May 18th, I think is actually the date, what's known as billing notices. So if you keep a book beyond a certain date, after a certain number of notices, you will actually receive a billing notice for its replacement cost. That will still be in effect, even though we're no longer going to be charging fines for keeping the item overdue. But once it reaches a certain point, and it's considered lost, patrons will be billed for the replacement cost for that item.
Okay, thank you.
If they then return the book, is that cost waived?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, Andrew?
If they then return the book, does that billing notice go away? That
Oh,
bill
yes,
go
of
away?
course. Yeah, the main thing is we're interested, we want to get the book, we want to get the item back. That's the intent. We're not looking to get wealthy, you know, from this practice, but rather we're really, the real intent here is to get the item back. That's the incentive.
I have
Any
one
other-
more question.
Yeah, please.
So will this, I know this dues affect the library budget, but will it affect the research column of your library where you provide the softwares for the learning softwares for the And then for like the summer activities of water, wings and waves and museum tickets. So will all that be affected because of this budget or the reduction in dues?
No, so Sarah, if you're asking, will there be any, let's say, reductions in our programs as a result of the loss of revenue from fines? Is that your
Yeah.
point? The answer is no. The beginning with the city manager, finance director, et cetera, all the way down was very supportive of this move. Ultimately, and as well as the council in approving this, fully appreciating and acknowledging, embracing the benefits of going fine-free, being aware of the negative impact that historically it's had on marginalized communities, particularly communities of color, and the inequities in having fines. And so they were fully prepared to take on the loss of the revenue and to replace that with other forms by adding additional funds to the library's budget in order to make up for the loss.
Okay, that's nice to hear. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, are we ready to move on to the rest of the director's report then? Any other questions first? Okay.
All righty, thank you, John. Okay, just to piggyback on what Councilor San Soucie mentioned about the budget, we are scheduled to present the library's budget on the second of the 3 budget committee days, which is Monday, May the 24th. Those meetings begin at 6 p.m. If you'd like to tune in, we are second on the docket that day behind community services and engagement. So if you were to ask me approximately what time do you think the library portion will be heard, I would say a conservative guess would be, let's say 6:30 or 6:45. If you tune in by then, you're reasonably certain not to miss any of the library's portion of the presentation. And then in addition, we recently, as of yesterday, received a request from the interim city manager to compile a list of those budget items which had either been not approved as part of the internal budget process for next year, or additional items that we might like to add to the budget that align with council priorities that for consideration. So again, Councilor San Sousie's point about potential use or funding rather from funds coming from the federal government in the form of the Recovery Act. So we put together a sort of a wish list, if you will, of those items earlier today, the meeting of the library leadership team, and submitted that to the city's finance director. And with luck, maybe some of those items will get approved. And just to give you an idea, one of them was to restore funds to the library's book budget, which had been reduced the past 2 years to help build our contingency budget. So we're requesting to add funds back to the book budget so that we can add additional materials and get them into the hands of our community members. And then another big ask was to restore funds that had been cut from our building maintenance budget that were for scheduled maintenance items, which otherwise would have to be deferred on our HVAC system and replacement of lights in the East Library parking lot, which had been deferred the last year or two. So things of that nature, plus some other various and sundry type of requests. So I'll keep the board notified if any of those requests or items are added back. On the personnel front, recruitment continues for our vacant positions as well as the 2 new supervisor positions. And those are in full swing. We did add, as I believe I may have added mentioned last meeting. I think we just had brought on board the 3 replacement library reference assistants who are being onboarded, and they have been fully trained and added to the staff and are taking their shifts in turn, and have, thanks to some really successful recruitment and training efforts, have been really valuable, already proven to be very valuable members, new members of the library team. And then moving on to our current service model, I'm pleased to announce that when you combine all of our current service points, including holds pickup, curbside, grab and go, etc., we have recently surpassed 80,000 patrons served since June of last year. Now, that's not total items. The number of items well exceeds that, but in terms of the number of individuals that we have served either at the curb or walk-ups in front of the library, etc., that number surpassed 80,000, and that's in the last 10 months. And so we're very proud of the staff, because if you think about the time and effort that goes into delivering an item, from the time that someone places a hold on it to the time we bring it out to your car or to your bicycle or to your book bag, there are a lot of steps that go into that. Pulling the item, creating a pick list, pulling the item from the shelf, bundling it, creating the list of the schedule for the day, then taking the phone call when the resident pulls up in their car, or when they show up on their bicycle or on foot, and then hand delivering that item to them. There's a lot of labor that goes on between all those steps. So 80,000 might not seem like a lot, but it's quite an accomplishment. We're very proud of the staff for reaching that major milestone. And then on the facilities front, just a brief update. Construction continues on our 4 new study rooms, and I just took a peek behind the curtain, and I didn't get slapped by the wizard. And I'm proud to say that construction remains ahead of schedule. And now we're looking at the possible completion by the end of the 3rd week, possibly as early as by the end of next week. And I was just thrilled. They're now working on the what do you call it? Not the molding, but not the finishing. There's a term for it. I can't think of the term, but anyway, they've done a fantastic job. And I was having a conversation earlier today with Gary Thompson, a supervisor from facilities who's overseeing the project. And we're both just expressing how pleased we are with the work, because they have really matched the look and feel of the existing library, including, for example, the finishing work. That's the word that I was trying to think of, and the woodwork. So it looks and feels like original construction. And when they're finished, you'll most likely not be able to see much of any difference between the original construction and the additional study rooms, because they've done such a commendable job of matching the woodwork and the finishing. And so we're very excited about that and looking forward to being able to launch those and roll those out. And as the numbers go down, and the governor's recent announcement that we might be able to further reopen the state as early as later this month, if we reach that threshold of 70% vaccination rate for those age 16 years and above, which means we might be able to open up those study rooms. And then we hope also the makerspace, which was completed last spring and has been on hold since then. So we're very excited about the possibility of opening up those spaces to the public in the near future. I also want to bring to this board's attention an ongoing situation in our east parking lot with some houseless individuals who've been calling the east parking lot home since, in some cases, prior to the pandemic, and we've seen an increase, unfortunately, in the number of such individuals. The police has been working very diligently with those individuals and our partners in other city departments and local community and social service agency to provide them with information, a variety of services to including our safe parking program and others for these individuals to avail themselves of, some of whom have taken advantage of these services, others of whom have not. And we have a meeting scheduled with the police department, city attorney's office, and community services engagement next week to discuss a proposal for a long-term strategy to satisfy all the constituents on a long-term basis, and then bring that to the city manager and ultimately to the city council. So I just wanted to bring that to the city, to this board's attention. We recently had a complaint, a solitary complaint, but a complaint nonetheless, from a member of the community who expressed some concerns about one such individual in the parking lot that was, as the community member described it, blocking access to the parking lot and making the resident feel unsafe. And so I responded to the community member, let them know the steps and the things that we're doing as a result. And also just wanted to let the board know that we're aware of the situation. We're working with the partners that I mentioned within the city on coming up with a long-term strategy. And then also a heads up on diversity, equity, inclusion work. The City Council, a big shout out and thank you to the City Council who recently approved a request from the city to provide additional funds for the SciComm, which is the group that is, did the survey of the city staff last fall and was recommended to do some additional trainings with city staff, including department heads and members of the City Council. And there is a training scheduled to take place. They're in the process of scheduling a variety of follow-up trainings now that those funds have been approved. And there is, I just saw a meeting invite for next month for a training with the department heads, and they're going to continue scheduling a variety of trainings for city staff at all levels of the organization, as well as the City Council. And then two more items before I end my report, and that is a summer reading program. I was mistaken. Last month mentioned that it kicks off in May. It actually starts in the beginning of June, and the theme is reading colors your world. And there's, to try to make the process more equitable, as we started last year, we're eliminating the need for registration. And the adult, there's also going to be a teen and adult version again this year. And the theme of the adult version will be read to feed with, if you read a certain amount, there is going to be some funds providing for Meals on Wheels, who's our community partner this year. And then lastly, we have slowly been bringing back volunteers on site and who are thrilled to be with us. And based on the success of that and with the recent downward trend in the number of cases and our ability to expand that service, we're looking to increase rather the number of volunteers that we will be bringing back at both locations, including things like pulling holds and a variety of other tasks that they have traditionally performed for us. So we're very excited to see them back in our buildings. And with that, I will end and open it up to any questions that members of the board may have.
Can you remind us what's the long-term plan for relocating the mystery section?
Great question, John. I know that work is in progress, and let me find out for you, because yes, one of the location of our fourth study room, which is going to double, by the way, as office space for our community action social worker who was on site, if you recall, prior to the pandemic, 3 days a week. So that fourth study room is going to occupy a portion of the alcove currently or formerly occupied by our mystery section. So portion of the mystery collection has been moved to book trucks and relocated to the top of the second floor behind the staircase. And so we're in the process of making plans to relocate that, and I will get back to the board with its permanent home location. Unless Kristin, you happen to know off the top of your head.
I don't. That's funny. I can't remember whether. Yeah, I'd be curious too.
It's a
You
mystery.
weren't planning to integrate them into the general fiction, were you? That doesn't sound familiar to me anyway, but I just can't think of where else they might go.
Yeah, I think it's going to remain a separate collection, but I'll find out and I'll let the board know.
I don't have any questions. But when you said like 80,000 people you have served so far, the staff deserves a celebration.
Thank
So
you,
you
Sarah.
take them out once the pandemic is end.
Thank you. I will pass along your comments, and I know that they will be appreciated.
Yes. So it's not only thanking them, they have very hard worked. So just to appreciate them, it could be kind to take them out or a little celebration at the library.
Yeah, it's funny. We actually did a special staff appreciation, and we've been providing them all along with a variety of for lack of a better word, perks, and to show our appreciation, whether it's bringing in pizza, donuts, or a variety of things. And we're actually going to be, we had some money in this year's budget. We're going to be offering t-shirts to every staff member who wants one. And we're going to combine that with our new strategic plan and use as an opportunity to promote our new strategic plan or mission and vision statement on the library branded t-shirts, which we're going to offer to all staff members.
That's nice.
And I think we've probably all got cards from Angela and an opportunity to get our own little tokens of appreciation. Did everybody have an opportunity to do that?
I do got that card. I was surprised to see that many hours I have been served as a volunteer.
Yes, Angela's been
What
doing
is
a great job as an interim.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what's the status of that position now? She's still an interim?
Correct. The position is an interim, and the status of that position is dependent upon the ratification of this year's or next year's budget. So depending on what happens, our former full-time volunteer manager, many of you I'm sure remember, Jennifer Johnson, has taken on a role as a much needed DEI project manager for the city. So there is, I believe, a request in next year's budget to add a similar position to continue to move that, to advance that work. And if that position is approved, then Jennifer, if she's so inclined, has the opportunity to apply for that position. And if she does and is selected, she would remain in that position. And then what would happen is that position would turn into a half-time program coordinator, volunteer coordinator position. And so it really depends on the outcome of next year's budget. So it's sort of a, it depends type of situation.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Glenn?
With the
Kathleen.
almost completion of the new study rooms, when can we come in and avail ourselves of them?
That is a great question, Kathleen. I wish I knew the answer. A lot of it's going to depend on what the city, emergency management tells us that we can safely do in this new environment, because those spaces are enclosed spaces for the most part. They're small spaces. So it would need to be vetted and approved by our emergency management manager. And so we're actually in the midst of having those conversations now. So trust me, we are as anxious as you are to make those available and as soon as possible, but we want to make sure that we're doing so in a way that's safe for all the members of the community. And same goes for the makerspace. And by the way, is Arvin still on the call? I have pitched, by the way, one piloting the rollout of the makerspace, having the Teen Library Council be one of the first groups to access that space and maybe use it to do some kind of, I don't know, for podcasting purposes or some, DIY type of program or initiative. And it was received favorably by the library leadership team. So stay tuned on that as well, as far as how we roll out that space and what that looks like.
We can also even use it for events or like events for little children. Would that be possible too? After obviously COVID restrictions and all that goes down.
Do you mean specifically in the makerspace?
Yes.
Oh, 100%. That room we plan to use to develop and deliver programs for residents of all ages, STEAM-related, programs, and we've had a year to practice on all the equipment that we purchased and get ready and develop programs, and we are just chomping at the bit waiting to do that. So definitely, and if you guys, the Teen Library Council and this board for that matter, have any specific suggestions for programs, let me know. We are very open to that. And partnerships, in addition to the ones that we've already developed for programs, we're very open to adding that to the list.
Okay,
Anticipate that's going to be a very well-used space. And if Hillsborough's example is true in Beaverton, we will probably outgrow that space within the first 6 to 9 months. I'll be happy to have that conversation about how can we expand that space based on the success of that program.
Arvin, did you want to say something else about that?
Glenn?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I would like to know that if it is possible that the volunteers, can back and help in the library maybe in August. Do you think so?
Yes, I think that's a very good possibility. And what I would encourage you to do is reach out.
I'm looking forward.
Yeah, so please reach out to Angela, who's our interim volunteer manager, and let her know of your interest. And she can help identify some opportunities for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking forward.
Yeah.
Okay, Kathleen, last month when you weren't here, which was an unfair time to do it in a way, I brought up to the board that by our bylaws, the chair has a whole lot of responsibilities and the vice chair only has one, which is to run the meetings in the chair's absence. And I suggested that since I am a lame duck, meaning due to term limits, this is my last term on the board, so we'll have a new chair next year. But that would be a good time maybe to better allocate the responsibilities between the chair and the vice chair, so the vice chair has more to do and the chair maybe a little bit less. And I asked the board to look at the bylaws and see if you could come up with any thoughts for that. And so I'm just bringing it up again. It's not something we need to discuss tonight necessarily, but something for you to think about as well as everybody else. Because if we make a change, I think the best time to do it would be effective with next year's officers, January 1st, to be fair to everybody. So nobody gets something they didn't bargain for or anything like that. And so especially anybody who chooses to run for office next year would have a clear description of what their responsibilities would be under the bylaws if we were to make a change. Okay, anybody have anything else they would like to bring up? Any questions for Glenn? All right, and lots of good news, good things going on. Circulation is going well, number of people served going very well, progress on study rooms. So it's an exciting time, and obviously I think we're all excited by maybe seeing some actual light at the end of this tunnel that is real light, but we don't know for sure. So we just eagerly await. Kristin, I think our next meeting is June 9th, is that right?
Let me look at my calendar. Yes, it is June 9th.
Okay, nobody has any other business. I will call the meeting adjourned a little bit early at 7:22. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All
everybody.
right, thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thanks all. Have a good one.
Thanks, Kristin. Thanks, Counselor.